So the Shafia trial ended, the verdict was correct, but now begins the denial. It's not about Islam and honor killings, it's simple domestic violence. Really? Robert Spencer is the man behind Jihad Watch and numerous books. He's terrific, and he joins us from, a secret location in the US. Welcome to you, my friend.
Thank you, Michael. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, it is undeniable that all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds commit grotesque crimes. That's not in dispute here. What many of us are claiming is that the number of specific honor killings in the Islamic world is so great that even though this may occur occasionally within Hinduism or Sikhism, the vast majority are within the Islamic world, and there is Quranic and Sharia support for such actions. Is that true?
Absolutely, Michael. Look, 91% of honor killings worldwide take place among Muslims. And Islamic law stipulates that there's no penalty for a parent who kills a child. And this gives rise to a culture in which this kind of thing is broadly tolerated, so that you have even ostensibly moderate states like Jordan and Syria. Syria, of course, is the Alawite regime, although it's a Sunni majority. Both of them have laws that actually mandate lesser penalties for honor murders than for other kinds of murders. And so if you can convince a court that you killed your daughter for honor, then you'll get off much more lightly than if you killed her for some other reason. And so it was actually Islamic clerics, for that matter, in Jordan, who stopped a measure in the Jordanian parliament to stiffen penalties for honor killings.
Right.
They said that it would lead to immorality in the society.
And this is Syria that was, at least up to now, fairly secular, and Jordan, which is one of the more enlightened and, I suppose, British-style Arab countries. In other Arab nations, it's sometimes not even against the law to commit an honor killing.
That's right. And so it's kind of rampant in Pakistan, and there is sometimes some desultory prosecution of the murderers, but generally, once the Western press looks away, there's essentially nothing that happens to them.
Now, of course, many people would say, and it's an understandable reaction, but the vast majority of Muslim men would never behave thus. They're kind and gentle, and even if their children went astray, they would be sorry, but like people in other religions, they would simply shake their heads. They would never hurt anyone.
Of course. And that's undeniable. It's the fact is that human nature is everywhere the same. And a parent to kill a child is not a natural impulse. It goes against every natural impulse. And so the vast majority of Muslim parents are exactly like the vast majority of any other kinds of parents. But where you start to get a religious justification for this practice, as in the stipulation in Islamic law that there's no penalty for a parent who kills a child, and also in chapter 18 of the Quran, which tells a very strange story of Moses, the biblical prophet, meeting an unnamed figure who is sort of the foundation of Sufi Islamic mysticism and is known as Khidr, or green, in Islamic tradition, but he's unnamed in the Quran. Anyway, he does these strange things while Moses is following him around. And finally, Moses asks him for an explanation. One of the things he does is meet this young man and just kill him gratuitously. And Moses, when he demands the explanation, the strange figure Khidr says to him, "Look, this guy was going to grow up to be a very wicked man, and his parents deserved better. They're going to have another son who's going to be a believer." And so this gives the impression that it is justifiable and maybe even meritorious to kill a child who is going astray, which is, of course, the fundamental assumption behind honor killing.
Now, again, many would say, perhaps not the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, there is precedent and example of criminality, of ethnic cleansing.
Oh, absolutely.
And so on. So,
absolutely.
Could this not apply, for example, to Judaism or even Christianity?
Well, yes and no. I mean, in the Old Testament, there's the story of Abraham and Isaac, and it's pretty clear that there is no circumstance under which a father killing a child is acceptable, and so it's kind of the opposite message from the story from Quran 18. And at the same time, you also have in Jewish tradition and Christian tradition an unbroken, among all sects and schools of thought, an unbroken chain of scholars and theologians saying that there's never any kind of acceptable way that this can be done for a parent to kill a child who's disobedient. Right. This has never been something that's ever been taught as right or good by any kind of Judaism or Christianity. Whereas in Islam, there is this very strange element that seems to consider it to be acceptable, such that you have a guy like Muhammad Shafia say that he would do it 1,000 times over again if he could. And, as you quoted yesterday on Fox, as may the devil defecate on their graves, and they went against Islam and so on. He was very clear that he did it, just as so many other honor murderers in the United States and Canada have been, that he did it because they had transgressed against the tenets of Islam. And you just don't see Jewish or Christian or Hindu or Buddhist parents doing this. And the fact that the vast majority of Muslim parents don't do it doesn't take away the fact that the Muslim parents who do are able to point to justification within Islamic tradition for doing so.
Mm-hmm. A lot more questions to ask, and you're the man to ask. So we'll have you back for another segment. Stay with us, please. The Shafia case, and what has happened since the verdict is we've heard and seen a lot of emotion being expressed, often I think misplaced. People who want to line up and watch the trial on a daily basis. I don't quite understand that, however. But what we haven't seen is very much detailed analysis of honor killings, naming names and speaking truth to power, I suppose. We don't do this to offend. We do this because we care about intellectual integrity and honesty. Robert Spencer joins us from the United States. He's a writer and author about Islam and Muhammad, and quite an authority. Let me ask you, in the 1,300 years of Islamic history, have there been any periods when honor killings have not been committed, when Islamic leaders have said this was not appropriate?
No, this has never happened. And that's another telling thing, because this is something that if you read back into the Islamic literature and history, you find stories of this coming up sporadically here and there, all through. And so it's not really something that has ever been addressed. And this is the big problem that we have. It's not just picking on Islam to say, wait a minute, this is something that has roots within Islamic teaching. It's not Islamophobic, whatever that is, in reality. It's simply a matter of concern for the young girls who are threatened by this. Because every time, as we see happening now in the wake of the Shafia verdict, every time there's an honor killing in the United States or Canada, we see the media right afterward covering up and saying this has nothing to do with Islam. Well, it has everything to do with Islam. And so if the Islamic community in Canada and in the United States were actually properly challenged to say, you need to teach against the attitudes and assumptions that lead to this kind of behavior, as any other group would be challenged to do if it were happening among them, then maybe we would not see another honor killing. But we've seen them, Michael, we've seen them recently in the last couple of years. Several in Texas, one in Florida, one in Georgia, one in Arizona, one in Detroit, and others as well. And nothing is done. Every time the main thing that gives rise to it is ignored, downplayed, and denied, which only means it's going to happen again.
Mm-hmm. Which is so different, of course, whenever a crime is committed by someone with even a tenuous link to Christianity. The crazed killer in Norway, who was a Freemason, hadn't been to a church in 15 years, wrote, "I have no personal relationship with God," was described as a Christian fundamentalist immediately. Timothy McVeigh, who said, "Science is my religion," is often described as being a Christian. Things that are said about Catholic clergy abuse, complete generalization. So there's and the other one I didn't mention, of course, when an abortionist is shot, which happens so rarely, thank the Lord, but we're then treated to endless episodes of TV detective shows about these horrible pro-lifers murdering abortionists. But so the fear of naming Islam, it must be more than simple physical cowardice. It's almost that it's thought to be unprogressive and anti-intellectual to name the Muslim religion as being at fault here.
Oh, very much so, and you're absolutely right. Far more abortionists have been killed on TV detective shows than in real life. It runs through the same thing. If it had been Christians who were murdering their children, and if there had been 5 or 6 cases like the 5 or 6 states that I named where cases of Islamic honor killing have happened over the last couple of years, imagine the outcry there would be. Why are Christians killing their children? What is it about Christianity? This would be front page New York Times reports, and CNN and CBS, ABC, NBC would be all over it. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, there's a double standard, obviously. And I think that it does go back to more than just fear. It goes back to the leftist Islamic alliance that we see running through the Occupy movement as well, and in many other contexts where, for whatever reason, perhaps their shared hatred of Western values and Judeo-Christian civilization, the hard left, despite its many moral and ethical disagreements with Islamic supremacists and jihadists, see them as an ally. Apparently, the conservatives and Western values of freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, equality of rights of all people, those are the kinds of things that are apparently their greater enemy, and they would unite even with a group they dislike in order to take us down, and then probably will turn on each other after that.
Within Islam itself, I've had extended conversations in this country and in the United Kingdom with people associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, they don't deny it. They tend to be Egyptian. They're often engineers, academics. They're likable. I find them to be honest. They're radical. I disagree with them. I find it hard to believe that these men would support honor killing, even though they are Orthodox Muslims. Is there any dissent within Islamic Orthodoxy? Are there any more enlightened people saying, yes, we're Muslim, but some things have to change?
Well, you know, I did know a fine man, Tashbi Syed, who passed away a few years ago, and he was a Muslim who very forthrightly agreed with me. He was on the board of Jihad Watch, and he said, yes, we have to reevaluate the idea of Muhammad as the supreme example and radically reinterpret large sections of the Quran. But he was a singular individual. I can't really name another like that. Most Islamic spokesmen in the West, they deny that there's any problem altogether. They say Islam is a religion of peace. You're racist, bigoted, hateful if you don't agree with that. And all these people who are committing crimes, honor killings, jihad murders, etc., in the name of Islam, they're not doing it really in the name of Islam. Don't trust your eyes, trust me. It's patently absurd, really.
Well, I mean, we have more progressive Muslims in this country. The same, frankly, 4 or 5 people who seem to be on TV all the time. They're terrific people, but they are very much liberal Muslims. I was just hoping within more Orthodox Islam there was someone coming forward. I can think of 1 or 2, but very few, who will actually speak on this issue and condemn it and say we need some sort of reformation.
No, the Reformation in Islam is really Wahhabism, the virulent and violent form of Islam in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab was a contemporary of George Washington. He died in 1792, and he dedicated himself to going back to the original Islam as taught in the Quran and Sunnah, and cleared away a lot of things that he said were later accretions, and he comes out with this even more violent thing. Nowadays, people aren't really talking about reform in Islam. They're just denying there's anything that needs to be reformed.
My goodness me. These are, I suppose, interesting times, and God save us from interesting times. Robert, as always, it's a great pleasure. You take care, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.